Early this morning, flames swept through the Evansburg mini mall, gutting at least 16 storefronts and leaving 2 firefighters injured. The blaze also leveled significant damage to TV 10's Cambria Region Bureau, where Kevin Flanagan is now standing by live with the latest. Kevin.
Matt, as you mentioned, this is the sort of fire that, well, I've been reporting on fires for some time, but this one hits a little closer to home. As you mentioned, TV 10 has been a tenant of the Evansburg Mini Mall for just over a year. This has been my home away from home. While our building is still at the end of the mall with our bureau is still standing, the interior did suffer extensive damage. Some of the other businesses were completely gutted. This was the sort of fire that was the biggest one that Evansburg has seen in some time. This was the inferno that greeted the first fire companies to arrive on the scene. The fire was discovered at 2:45 this morning. Because the Evansburg Mini Mall was a long wooden structure with few fire breaks between businesses, there was nothing to keep the flames from spreading.
Containment is the biggest problem, and you know, you're definitely going to lose property, but containment to try to stop it where you can stop it. And you got to, there's a point in time where you have to just say, hey, I lost that building, I got to go to another and stop it.
Before it was brought under control, there were 45 fire trucks on the scene. 20 fire companies across the northern part of Cambria County had been called out. 2 members of the Dauntless Fire Company were slightly injured when they fell from a roof. Both were treated for sprained ankles. For the businesses located in the devastated section of the mall, there was little, if anything, left.
Basically, everything that we had in the office is gone. You know, any kind of paperwork on people, equipment, different things like that. By the looks of it, it's totally gone.
It was the loss of stored information that hit many the hardest. Dr. Philip Wu, a longtime tenant of the mini mall, found that 5 years of patient medical records had gone up in smoke.
You can't put a price on the patient records and things. It's just a shame.
Dr. Wu says he will be rebuilding here. That seems to be the consensus from the other merchants in the mini mall that were devastated by this fire. Yet 10 hours after the blaze was discovered, firefighters are still on the scene spraying down hot spots. It'll be some time before any of that rebuilding can get underway. Reporting live from the Cambria Region Bureau, Kevin Flanagan, TV 10 Action News.
Thank you for that report, Kevin. We, of course, will have more on that Evansburg fire tonight on Action News at 6.
At the Evansburg Mini Mall in Cambria Township. That's just south of Evansburg. At least 18 of the mall's 25 stores were damaged or destroyed. Several firefighters required hospital treatment. The cause of that fire remains under investigation this noontime.
A Keystone Country shopping center. Damage is now in the millions after fire ripped through an office and shopping complex near Evansburg, Cambria County. Fire broke out early this morning at Long's Mini Mall on State Route 160 and roared out of control for 3 hours. Tonight, at least 18 businesses are in ruins, including our WTAJ-TV Cambria Region News Bureau. The blaze was discovered just before 3 this morning and quickly spread through the complex.
You know, you're definitely going to lose property, but containment to try to stop it where you can stop it. And you got to, there's a point in time where you have to just say, hey, I lost that building, I got to go to another and to stop it.
More than 200 volunteers from 15 fire companies battled the blaze. Nobody was seriously hurt. Emergency crews were on the scene until late this afternoon. Cambria Region reporter Kevin Flanagan also was there to see what was left after this devastating fire.
Firefighters were still pouring water on hot spots this afternoon as business owners and operators attempted to assess damages expected to total near $5 million. The 10-year-old Evansburg Mini Mall has prospered and grown in a busy part of Cambria Township. Merchants in the mall reported a successful Christmas shopping season. Now many are wondering where to turn next.
I'm pretty shocked still, but it's like your whole business. This is where it started.
Dentist Philip Wu had been in his mini mall office for 5 years. He says he plans to rebuild, but replacing lost patient records will be a big problem. Mini mall owner Edwin Long was out of town, but a family spokesman said current plans call for rebuilding the shopping center. Firefighters hope any construction plans will call for firewalls separating sections of the strip mall. The lack of firewalls presented a big problem to those fighting today's blaze.
That made a huge difference because we had fire in 400 feet of wall, 400 feet of ceiling instead of maybe 60 feet. We had fire the full length.
For me, this fire hit close to home because one of the 18 businesses severely damaged was the Action News Cambria Region Bureau. While firefighters were able to save the mall structure at this part of the shopping center, the interior damage was almost complete. The only firewall in this section of the mall saved the Ebensburg office of the Portage National Bank. That office will be open tomorrow while other operators are still scrambling for temporary quarters.
We're already making contingencies, setting up down in Johnstown and so forth. But as far as getting things started back in Ebensburg right now, not for a while by the looks of it.
The fire started along the back wall of a clothing store in the mall. While fire investigators have been called in, early indications are that the fire was purely accidental. Kevin Flanagan, TV 10 Action News, Ebensburg.
An attempt to see
Salvage. For surveyors, there are stacks of water-soaked maps.
We could salvage a lot of files and some desks, but lost a lot too.
Firefighters say the fire was able to race through this shopping center due to a lack of fire stops in the roof. Those concrete or brick barriers in between buildings that can prevent or at least delay a fire from spreading. And legally, there's nothing wrong with that. Firewalls are not required under Cambria Township's present fire codes. But fire officials believe they would have drastically cut down on the damage.
It would have probably, we'd probably lost 2, maybe 3 stores. But the way it is now, we lost 20 businesses in here.
The state fire marshal says he's found nothing to indicate the fire is suspicious. It began in the rear of the mall between a dress shop and a radio shop, but investigators aren't sure yet how it started. The people who owned the stores here and worked here only know it will take them weeks, even months, to put their stores and their lives back together. Susan Brozick, WTAE 4 News.
A total of 15 different fire companies were called in to fight that blaze in Ebensburg last night.
The Action News Night Beat for Thursday, January 12th. You'll meet a local man who says he's paying dearly for doing what, threatening to kill an area resident. The police chief of Gallitzin Cambria County is accused of pulling a gun on a resident following an argument over a parking ticket. Baron Peterson explains.
This is merely a result of an individual who is dissatisfied because of a violation he committed. He was given a parking ticket in his town.
But a simple parking ticket issued in Gallitzin Borough has ballooned into criminal charges against the chief of police. On December 20th, Crescent resident Samuel Pupo, who wouldn't go on camera, got hit with a ticket. He complained to the borough but got nowhere. 9 days later, Pupo claims that while he was at this Gallitzin convenience store, he had a confrontation with Police Chief Joseph Fox concerning that ticket. And Pupo says later that night, in the parking lot of the Gallitzin VFW, Chief Fox damaged his van and pulled his gun, threatening to kill Pupo. Chief Fox refused comment, but Gallitzin Borough Council President Joe Bocci doesn't buy Pupo's story.
He made that story up because there was no one there, just Mr. Pupo and our police chief. Now, it's his word against our police chief.
Bocci says council has complete confidence in Chief Fox and is behind him 100%. There are 3 charges against the chief: recklessly endangering, terroristic threats, and criminal mischief. A hearing on the matter is set before a district magistrate on February 7th. Baron Peterson, TV 10 Action News.
Johnstown police are asking the life of Samuel Pupo. Pupo testified at a preliminary hearing for Fox today, saying his car was vandalized by the police chief. While the accusations were enough to prompt a state police investigation, today Cambria County Magistrate Julia Rosem dismissed the criminal complaint. The justice cited a lack of credible evidence in refusing to turn the case over to the Common Pleas Court for trial. After falling through ice on the Great Miami River near Dayton, Dion Jones was submerged for about 30 minutes, but doctors think he could survive
his perfect season, and we're also going to go away. To 10-0 tonight. Another team heading into tonight's action with a 9-0 record. The Panthers of Penn Cambria. Chuck Lucidor doing a fantastic job with that squad, and they go on to win it tonight by the final of 14-0 over arch rival Central Cambria. We pick it up with 14-0 Penn Cambria in the lead in the second half. Carmen Fielis, a nice throw to Rick Scanlon. That picks up the first down. Chuck Lucidor looking to take his team to its first ever unbeaten season, and they do just that. But on 4th and 5, the Red Devils come up big defensively. Central Cambria played a whale of a ball game tonight. We're going to pick it up in the 4th quarter. Central Cambria driving. Mike Kenny has his pass picked off by Justin Wheeler, but he coughs it up. Jason Cross recovers, and the Red Devils are still in action. But Kenny finds himself in trouble. He's sacked by Rick Scanlon and Doug Burke. McKinney is not daunted. He comes back. Hits Regis George. Watch the catch. Watch after the catch. Wow. He's okay, though. Gets right back up. Now, we have another 1st and 10 at the 10. Central Cambria trying to get on the board and make this a game. But Felix comes up with the interception, and that pretty much seals it for Penn Cambria. They complete a perfect season. Penn Cambria wins it tonight by the final of 14.
Amazon territory of Roraima. The Yanomami Indians are facing a conflict of their own. In 1987, the Amazon gold rush reached Roraima. Today, there are more than 40,000 gold diggers entrenched in the middle of the 9,000 Yanomami Indian nation. To make matters worse, the Yanomami are dying of malaria, a disease brought to their remote jungle by the Amazon gold diggers. It is estimated by Indian rights activists that the disease killed hundreds.
His motorcycle around 7 p.m. Del Grande was discovered by motorists driving along Cooney Road in Washington Township. No other vehicles were involved in the accident. Del Grande was flown to Memorial Hospital in Johnstown, where he is still being treated. A deadlocked jury has ended the... Thursday, May 17th, you'll find out why this tanker truck crash could mean major highway repairs. And you and I paid nearly $80,000 to move this house. Now, the state is investigating the matter, but the big story on Action News tonight, a rescue truck crashes while racing to an emergency in Cambria County. Details are still sketchy, but the two people, rather, are believed to have been killed when a Crescent fire truck crashed this afternoon while en route to an accident. The truck went off the road and down an embankment on Route 53 just south of Asheville. Firefighters covered a body at the scene of the crash, but his identity has not been released. We'll have more on this tragedy on the Action News Night Beat. It's believed that fire truck was heading for the scene.
They were thrown from the vehicle and were killed instantly, unfortunately. I'm not sure what happened with the other accident. I know the people were life flighted and transported out. Last I know, they were all alive. This particular accident was in response to that accident.
So you have basically 2 accidents here that you're dealing with?
Yes.
Is there anything else you could tell us at this point in time?
Well, we're still, Dr. Kardik responded, pronounced, and he was here right away. And from this point, we're going to go back and try to notify families and see that.
The rest of the Crescent Volunteer Fire Department must be extremely upset at this point.
We had the Portage and Lilly come up and take over the scene, and we got the firemen out of here. And they have crisis working with the firemen because it's a very tragic and very unfortunate thing to happen. These men risk their lives every day for people, and this is a sad instance of what can happen.
Thank you very much, John, for talking to us. So, Gary, that's basically what's happening here at the scene. We're trying to get the details. The names will not be released yet of the dead here. Hopefully, the people that were in the accident up the road will survive the accident, but we don't even know that at this point. So we have 2 dead firefighters here on Route 53 just north of Gallitzin. Mary Parks reporting.
Thank you, Mary. And we do now, just minutes ago, we got the names of those 2 firemen who were killed in the accident. We can tell you who they are. 77-year-old Thomas Bianconi and 62-year-old Robert Adams. He was the driver of the tanker truck, both men from Crescent. We'll, of course, continue to follow this story and have even more for you tonight at 11. Now, in other news, that first accident on Route 53 near Asheville sent 3 people to area hospitals. The names and conditions of those not yet available. A father and son were in a pickup truck and a woman in a Blazer. 2 vehicles collided head-on. The man and woman were taken by helicopter to Johnstown's Memorial Hospital. The boy transported by ambulance to Altoona Hospital. We'll have more on both of these tragic accidents at 11.
Steve Richard with AccuWeather.
Crescent Volunteer Firefighter tanker truck to the accident on Route 53 near Asheville when the wreck happened.
Tonight, other members of the Crescent Fire Department gathered at their hall, obviously still stunned by the loss. Mary Parks reports.
Authorities say the 2 firefighters were killed instantly when water shifted in the tanker truck, sending the vehicle careening out of control. 77-year-old Tian Bianconi and 62-year-old Bob Adams, both of Crescent, were thrown out of the rolling truck and died instantly.
This is you know, the type of risk that these gentlemen do all the time. They respond, they help others, and they put their life on the line. And we've seen already this year between policemen and firemen the tragedy that can happen, and so quick.
At the Crescent Fire Hall, fellow volunteers solemnly prepared for visitors. There's been another death in the family.
Booby Adams, as he was known to all of us, was 62 years of age. He leaves behind 5 children. He's a member of the Crescent Fire Company for 45 years, and he was a former fire chief for 15 years. Nutley Bianconi was a member for 50 years. He leaves behind his wife, Faye, and 4 children.
Altoona Fire Chief Rennie Santone says the 2 were good firefighters. He worries they may be the last of a dying breed.
I find in most cases now it's hard to get younger firefighters in the fire service, and because of that, some of the older men have to take up the responsibilities of responding to fires, especially during the day.
Several years ago, another Crescent firefighter died while he was directing traffic near an accident scene, and he was run over. Latouille says this second tragedy still hasn't completely sunk in.
We have Gallitzin Lily Evansburg firemen who offered to stand by in our hall to answer any calls that may come in right now. Because needless to say, most of our people are in no shape to respond to calls now. And
Mary Parks, News Center 6, Crescent.
The accident the 2 firemen were responding to was a head-on collision at around 2 o'clock. According to state police, a Blazer driven by Tammy Ann Bird, age 21 of Evansburg, was traveling south on Route 53. Bird's vehicle slid on a curve and into the path of a pickup truck driven by 36-year-old Larry Matish of Gallitzin. Both Matish and Bird were flown by helicopter to Johnstown's Memorial Hospital, where they are listed in critical condition. James' son, 5-year-old Stephen, was taken by ambulance to Altoona Hospital's intensive care unit.
Citizens, volunteer firefighters killed in the line of duty. 62-year-old Robert Adams, longtime chief of the Crescent Department, and 77-year-old Thomas Bianconi, who served the unit for more than 50 years, were killed yesterday afternoon while responding to an accident scene near Crescent. The tanker truck they were riding careened out of control on Route 53. Both men were thrown out of the vehicle and both were killed instantly. Their deaths have left the company and the community in a state of shock.
This is the type of risk that these gentlemen do all the time. They respond, they help others, and they put their life on the line. And we've seen already this year between policemen and firemen the tragedy that can happen, and so quick.
And flags are at half-staff at fire stations around the area today. The 3 people injured in that other accident on Route 53 in Asheville remain in critical condition today. Both drivers, 21-year-old Tammy Bird of Evansburg and 36-year-old Larry Matish of Gallitzin, were flown from the scene to Johnstown's Memorial Hospital. Matish's 5-year-old son, Stephen, was taken to Altoona Hospital with leg and head injuries. Police say that Bird's Blazer slid on a curve and crashed into Matish's pickup truck. People living...
Rogers alone killed Patsy Lascoli. Was he part of a group of...
I guarantee if we were out, would call back and say, hey, get the food ready.
The 2 firefighters were responding as a backup to an accident where fuel had spilled. Their tanker was needed as a safety precaution since foam was being used to clean up the fuel. The truck was 21 years old, but neither its age nor that of its operators are believed to have been factors in the crash. Since the accident, the phone at the Crescent Fire Hall has been ringing off the hook with condolence calls from area fire companies and the public.
It was really a shock to me when I heard it.
They'll be missed?
Very much, both of them.
I go to the senior center and things are quiet in there. Everybody seems to feel badly about it.
They were very nice guys. Very nice, always friendly. I just can't believe that it happened.
Memorial services will be held Sunday evening to be followed by a full honor burial Monday morning.
Both men will be deeply missed. It'll be a loss that it'll take a long time to get over, but we'll do what those men wanted us to do. We'll carry on, and we'll keep this department the best that it is.
Steve Kearns, News Center 6, Crescent.
A Ligonier area.
Mourning the loss of 2 while rushing to save the lives of others. They were killed yesterday when their fire truck crashed as they responded to an accident. Today, reporter Kevin Flanagan returned to Crescent, where friends and colleagues of the fallen firefighters are still trying to come to grips with the loss.
In many ways, things seem back to normal at the Crescent Fire Hall. Cleanup operations were underway, and as always, company members were doing what they could to make sure their fire station was in top-notch condition. But among those doing their jobs, there was a real sense of loss.
I just don't know what to say. It's sort of got us a little bit all stunned here, but 2 men like that, you can never replace them.
Between both of them, they had approximately 95 years service. They're a member of an elite group that is still here, of the active senior members.
Chief Joe Adams replaced his uncle in the department's top job 5 years ago. The 62-year-old Robert Adams had been an active member of the company since 1945. His service went far beyond his 14 years as chief.
He was always here, yes. He was here for everything. It doesn't matter if it was bingo, it was fighting fires, or scrubbing floors, or anything. Bob was there.
The other company member killed had an even longer involvement with the department. 77-year-old Thomas Bianconi, or Nutley as everyone around the fire hall knew him, had been a company member for half a century and still had his special role.
He didn't really get into the firefighting anymore, but he was always here for the guys.
We used to have spaghetti dinners here and things like that, and Nutley did the cooking. I said, you don't replace people like that.
The loss of the two veteran firefighters will be especially felt by the younger members of the company who in the past always knew where to turn for advice.
Between the two of them, they taught me everything I know about the fire department. Nutley taught me how to drive these rigs.
Members of the company say these boots, now standing as a memorial outside the fire hall, will be impossible to fill. They were worn with pride by two dedicated members of a vanishing generation of volunteer firemen. Kevin Flanagan, TV 10 Action News, Crescent.
When Action News continues,
2-year-old Robert Adams and 77-year-old Thomas Bianconi died Thursday when their tanker went over an embankment. The firemen were responding to an accident at the time. Good evening and thanks for joining us.
Hundreds gathered in Crescent to pay their respects to the fallen firefighters. Sari Pador reports.
Family, friends, and fellow firefighters gathered in and around St. Francis Xavier Church in Crescent today to say goodbye. They said goodbye to Robert Adams and Thomas Nutley Bianconi, two men who gave their lives to building a fire company, two men who gave their lives to help others, and two men who, in the end, gave their lives doing what they wanted to do.
And so the calling that both Tom and Bob were called to that day was to take them to an accident, to be of assistance, to be of service at this time. And in the process, of course, in trying to be of service to others, they gave their lives.
Reverend Roche praised the two men and the dedication they had to the fire company. Fellow firefighters spoke about how Adams helped chair a committee to purchase fire trucks. The last truck Adams purchased carried him to the cemetery. Bianconi was carried in a truck he never had a chance to drive. More than 50 fire departments followed in a full honor processional to the cemetery. In addressing the community's grief, Reverend Roche put it best: no greater love than this has any person, than to lay down one's life for one's friends. Sari Pador, News Center 6, Crescent.
The second day of jury deliberations.
Crescent firefighters had come to bid farewell to two of their own. Both Crescent Department members who died last week while rushing to a traffic accident. Cambria Region reporter Kevin Flanagan was at today's services.
It appeared almost like a small army of volunteer firemen had descended on Crescent. Fire companies from all over the area sent representatives to bid farewell to two well-respected and dedicated fire company members. 62-year-old Robert Adams and 77-year-old Thomas Nutley Bianconi long lived in the same neighborhood, served in the same fire company, worshipped at the same church, and died together in the same tragic accident. Family members decided the two should be buried in a joint service. Their caskets were laid end-to-end in the center aisle of St. Francis Xavier Church. The pews were filled to overflowing with friends, family, and volunteer firemen. During the service, the Reverend David Roche pointed out that both of these men died while being of service to others, and that was exactly how both of them chose to spend their entire lives. Because the two died in the line of duty, there was a huge turnout of other volunteers, demonstrating the brotherhood that all these firefighters feel. Adams and Bianconi were transported to their final resting place atop Crescent Department fire trucks. As the procession passed beneath the first of two huge arches made by the cross ladders of aerial trucks, an estimated 60 pieces of firefighting equipment fell in behind. The two were laid to rest as they had served, side by side. Members of the Crescent Fire Department say it will be impossible to replace the two, who were always around and willing to lend a helping hand. Kevin Flanagan, TV 10 Action News, Crescent.
A funeral mass was held today for a longtime Altoona educational.
And 70 Thomas B. Koning died Thursday when their tanker went over an embankment on Route 53 near Asheville. The firemen were responding to an accident at the time. Hundreds turned out today to pay their respects to the fallen firefighters, and over 50 fire departments took part.
Medical instruction and advice, and that this service has received high marks.
They looked at us 3 years ago and they said, "You guys are really necessary. We really need the three of you there." I don't know why they're changing their mind now, because we participated with every hospital, every quality assurance, and every guideline that they've given us.
But under the terms of new state regulations going into effect July 1st, this local medic command operation would have been curtailed.
We're not a hospital, therefore we can't be a command, and we can't be command positions.
State officials say the regulations are designed to organize emergency medical service into a system, but the local command doctors say the system doesn't work in this sort of mountainous country where radio contact often fails.
I think that people need to come up and take a look at the area, ride with some of the crews, and see exactly what's done.
To keep these doctors in the field, political pressure and a petition drive have been started in their support. These medic command doctors say growing public pressure seems to be working in their favor. State officials have granted the command a 90-day extension of service while another look is taken at the operation. The only fear these doctors have is that it could be a stalling tactic to diffuse public support.
Right now, this topic is of utmost concern to the citizens of Cambria County. It's 3 months down the line, you know, to try and get the citizens up again is going to be a real problem.
Action News will continue to follow any efforts to put the Northern Cambria Medic Command operation out of business. Kevin Flanagan, TV 10 Action News, Evansburg.
When Action
Drinking and driving. Patients can hear us, okay? He is medically paralyzed. He's very sick. He was involved in a high-speed alcohol-related accident. He's extremely sick. We have him on a special bed so he doesn't get pressure sores. He's too sick to turn. He's getting plasma.
Excuse me.
Are you sick? Sit down. Are you going to pass that right now? Okay. Right?
I'm alive.
You want to sit down? Sit down right here. You're dizzy. Sit.
Sit.
Sit. Take a couple deep breaths for me. Put your legs down. Head, feet, legs. You all right? Okay. A couple deep breaths. I think they're shocked, especially when they come up to the unit and they see somebody 15 years old with 2 broken legs, a broken arm, or when they see somebody that's paralyzed that can do nothing for themselves and they're only a teenager. And I think it just really hits home. This is Jeffrey. He was involved in an accident. He was the passenger in a car. The driver was drinking. Jeff has a closed head injury. He's just waking up from being in coma. He's been here a very long time. Since February, he hurt his head real bad. He had a very nasty bruise on his brain that we had to take care of. He also had a lot of belly problems. Jeffrey's also has some infections, and that's what he's battling right now. He had a temperature of 105 yesterday. He had a lot of damage, but we're all hoping, we're doing the best we can to help him recover.
With the experience still fresh in their minds, the group returns to the conference room for a discussion on alternatives to drinking and driving.
I'm forbidden to drink, but kids are going to do it. I mean, we're teenagers, and I'm not saying it's something that I like to get out into every weekend, but I do it, my friends do it, and no matter how much our parents want to deny it, and if we have that curfew and we have to come home, and like if we call, they're going to be furious.
It's worth it. Getting home safely and having your parents mad at you, as you said, for the rest of your life. They'll get over it.
I'm talking grounded for the rest of my life.
At least
But
you'll have a
they'll
life.
get over it.
That's right.
At least you'll have a life.
It's much easier for them to deal with a phone call from you saying, "I'm drunk, come pick me up," than having us call you and say, "We have your son or daughter laying here. We don't know if she's going to make it."
Sure, I'll still drink and go to parties and everything. I'm just not going to drive and get myself in a situation where I'm going to end up at shock trauma.
As the students reflect on the events of the day, the vivid images still playing in their minds, there are young people going about their lives and planning their evenings, yet unaware that they will be among the patients to visit shock trauma tonight.
One way kids are getting home safely is by assigning a designated driver who agrees to stay sober. But as it turns out, even that isn't enough. 11% of drunk people killed by cars are actually intoxicated pedestrians who fall or stumble into traffic.
Up next. Or who live near wooded areas. In tonight's Health Watch report, Charlotte Ames tells us what steps we should be taking to protect ourselves again this year.
It's just natural to want to spend more time outdoors when the landscape turns green and the flowers come out. But unfortunately, the fair weather also brings out the northern deer tick, which transmits Lyme disease. Doctors say 60% of the people who contract the illness develop a red spreading rash.
If they have the rash, it's pretty clear. Without the rash, the early symptoms are flu-like symptoms, nausea, fatigue, headache sometimes.
Lyme disease was first detected 13 years ago in Old Lyme, Connecticut. It spread to 43 other states, and a Penn State entomologist says he's been tracking it in central Pennsylvania. Residents of Elk County should be on the lookout for the deer ticks. Lyme disease has also been reported in several areas of Clearfield County. The best way to avoid the illness is prevention. Cover the arms and legs when you're outside, and when you come indoors, examine yourself, your children, and your pets for ticks.
There is a great deal of concern that there have been a number of people who have apparently gotten the tick bites in their backyards. And some of those yards do have quite a bit of trees and brush, as well as grass.
It's also a good idea to use an insect repellent if you're spending time outdoors. Experts recommend pesticides containing 20 to 40% DEET.
It repels ticks with nearly the efficiency of some of the other products, and it is readily available, and it has been tested for against mosquitoes and other things for such a long period of time that it is believed to be a fairly safe material.
Penn State entomologist Stephen Jacobs says a newer pesticide called Permanun is also effective but can usually only be purchased from a veterinarian or a hardware store. If you do find ticks, remove them carefully from your body and give them to a local ag extension agent.
If these ticks are alive when they reach us, we can examine them for spirochetes, the causative agent of Lyme disease, and that will help us also in mapping the distribution of both ticks and disease in Pennsylvania.
If you think you could possibly have Lyme disease, see a doctor immediately. On the Health Watch, this is Charlotte Ames, TV 10 Action News.
Looking for answers. Good evening and thanks for joining us. This is another example of the dangers of underground coal mining.
A 46-year-old Gallitzin man died and 8 others were hurt when the vehicle they were riding on left the tracks and crashed into a wall. Mary Parks reports investigators are trying to determine just what caused the fatal accident.
Months before federal, state, and union investigators finalize their reports. Today, people are talking about what happened underground last night at Mine 33, but they don't know exactly why.
One of the miners in that accident told us it happened in a split second. He said the man trip was on its way out of the mine, the miners joking with each other, and the next second they were hurtling off a track.
12 coal miners were traveling out of the mine in a vehicle much like this one that we photographed in Indiana County. The man trip left the track after its front wheels hit a switch and went one way, and the rear wheels kept going straight. 46-year-old Donald Smith of Gallitzin died after he was thrown from that man trip and then pinned by it against a bradish wall. 3 others remain hospitalized tonight. Longwall foreman Arthur Britton, Eugene Serto, and Stanley Zabinski. 5 others were treated and released at area hospitals, and 3 escaped injury.
We investigated the accident throughout the night. The accident investigation is still incomplete, and it'll probably be quite some time before we can pinpoint the causes.
Sometimes man trips do leave the tracks. One miner says, however, this is the first time he's ever had an accident like this one in his 14-year career. He said the vehicle was moving slowly, as is usual. One of the investigators told us there is no apparent reason at this time for the crash, although the equipment is being checked and all the survivors interviewed. He said it could just be a freak accident. Investigators return to the mine tomorrow morning. Mine 33 operations will resume tonight at midnight. Mary Parks, News Center 6, Cambria Township.
A man from Holzapfel was badly...
By year's end, Worley had developed into a top-notch offensive threat. The back we saw in the Denver playoff game had come a long way since the opening week. But Worley knows it was just as important getting there as it was being there. It was all part of adjusting to life in the pro ranks.
We finished up strong last year, and now we know we got something to play for.
Worley's one half of the Steelers' 1-2 backfield punch. Along with Merrill Hodge, he gives the Steelers one of the NFL's most potent backfields. And the guy handing them the ball says the best is yet to come.
Timmy's going to be a major part of our offense. I think him and Merrill both can rush for 1,000 yards. I don't think that's out of the question at all. They're both great running backs.
With a new offensive coordinator and a revamped offensive scheme, 1990 will be an interesting year for the Steelers. It could be a very interesting and very rewarding year for the Steelers' number 38. Albie Oxenrider, WTAE 4 Sports.
Beth Daniel won the LPGA event in Young.
Usually about metal damage. Action News reporter David Bonfilio has more.
At about 8:30 this morning, 4 Conrail locomotives pulling 111 train cars rolled past this portion of track by Route 22. Conrail says 14 of those cars derailed. 2 were tankers holding a non-toxic artificial sweetener. Those tankers rolled down the hill. 1 spilled some of the substance into the creek. Sugar Run got a little sweeter.
Hey, Walt, give that hose another shot of air.
About 1 mile down the creek, the Allegheny Township hazmat team works to remove the sweetener from the creek. They set up a method to catch the stuff, then they scoop it into garbage bags. This cleanup took all day.
Tank's already plugged off, so we're just getting what run out of it. 1 tank's still intact and 1 was split.
Conrail says re-railing operations are underway, although there have been some delays through that area for both Conrail and Amtrak. No injuries have been reported. David Bonfilio, TV 10 Action News.
An early morning crash claimed the life of a Cambria County man. State police say 31-year-old Kevin Schumack of Fallen Timber was killed when his car ran off a legislative route in Dean Township. The vehicle slammed into several trees, pinning Schumack inside. Authorities believe the crash happened at about 1 this morning. However, the wreckage wasn't discovered until about 9 this morning. Testimony is underway in Pittsburgh.
So a 100 jumped the track west of the Horseshoe Curve near Gallitzin. 2 tankers tumbled down a hillside into a creek. A line on one of the tankers ruptured, spilling a sugar substance. Conrail officials say the train was not carrying any hazardous materials. There were no injuries. The cause of the derailment is under investigation. The accident caused some delays on Conrail and Amtrak lines.
Men from the Altoona area have been missing since Friday night when their 17-foot fishing boat did not return to port. The controversy over emergency medical services in McKees.
Hastings set out early Friday morning from Erie's Lampe Marina. They were reported missing at dusk.
The Coast Guard searched for days before giving up. Now Wendy Dockenbaugh reports family and friends are picking up where the Coast Guard left off.
The men are 47-year-old Pat Spar of Hastings, 48-year-old James Spar of Sankertown, and 58-year-old Cliff Harbor of Crescent. The only clues to their fate are washed-up fishing tackle, a flare gun, and 2 gasoline cans. Relatives say the objects were found miles apart. The boaters may be trying to leave a trail.
They had a plan that if anything ever would happen to either one of the boats, that they would start throwing items overboard. And this is what's happening. They're coming in piece at a time. And it seems like they're trying to give you a message.
Hopes are high in Sankertown that 3 men are still alive. All were experienced boatsmen. Many townspeople have gone to Erie and chartered boats and planes and joined the search. Those who stayed behind have taken a collection to finance the rescue effort. James Vaughn of Munster, Cambria County, owns the boat. He was with the 3 in Erie but did not go on the trip Friday. Townspeople describe all the men as avid sportsmen who tackled Lake Erie every weekend. But few lost on the massive lake survive. Those who knew Cliff Harbor and Jim and Pat Spar hope and pray they are some of the few. Wendy Dockenbaugh, News Center 6, Sankertown.
The Crescent Sportsman Club has started a fund drive to pay for the rental of helicopters and boats to continue the search. Contributions can be sent to the Crescent Sportsman's Rescue Fund, Box 174, Crescent 16630.
The Federal Department of Health
Rescue Bad weather and rough waters for 3 days, but called off their search last night after no new leads were found. 50-year-old Jim Spar, 50-year-old Pat Spar, and 48-year-old Cliff Harbor, all from the Crescent area, disappeared on Friday. Family members say they are now raising funds and hope to continue searching privately for the men. When Action News continues, more
missing since last week on Lake of the search and rescue operation. The U.S. Coast Guard ended their search when authorities became convinced no one would be found alive. Family and neighbors say they still feel it's too early to give up hope for the missing men.
The boat hasn't been found, and that's a good sign there. They might be on down in the New York line there or somewhere down there.
They're all, like you said, experienced fishermen, experienced sportsmen. They would not panic in a situation like this.
Because of the high cost of the private search and rescue operation, backers of the effort are asking for contributions, which can be sent to the Crescent Sportsman's Rescue Fund, care of the Laurel Bank in Crescent. State lawmakers are working on a
line. Good evening and thanks for joining us. Rescuers found the body of 47-year-old Pat Spar of Hastings last evening, and they believe 48-year-old James Spar and 58-year-old Cliff Harbor, both from Crescent, are in the same area.
Wendy Dockenbaugh tells us the financial support from sportsmen across the country will enable rescuers to keep looking.
More than $7,000 in contributions have poured into the Crescent Sportsman's Club to pay for boat and plane rental to scan the massive lake for clues. But with Pat Spar found dead, chances are slim the two others are still alive.
We think it's just a matter of time till we find them, that's all. There's no possible way it could be alive now. And it's really hurting the family and everybody around. There's not much else we can do.
The three took off from Lake Erie's Lampe Marina last Friday morning. When they failed to return by sunset, the Coast Guard began a search. That search was aborted Monday. Then family and friends organized a search of their own. All three are described as experienced boaters and avid sportsmen.
We hunt, fish with them, everything, as local boys, good old boys.
Neighbors and friends of Pat Spar are shocked and grief-stricken by the news of his death. He was a friend of the community who will be missed by all.
He was a person that you could count on when you needed him, and his friendly smile and wave was just, well, people just aren't as friendly as they can be nowadays, but Pat was. So he'll be missed, sorely missed.
Wendy Dockenbaugh, News Center 6, Cambria County.
The former president of Bethlehem Steel's Bar
put up planes and put to search for the men, so anyone interested is urged to contribute to the fund. The Crescent Sportsman's Rescue Fund. Contributions can be sent to the Laurel Bank branch in Crescent.
Okay, Kevin, thank you very much. State police are looking for a
7-year-old of Hastings drowned. A family friend searching the waters of Lake Erie in a boat spotted the body on shore. Spar, his brother James, and another man were reported missing last Friday when they failed to return home from a fishing trip. The Coast Guard suspended its search, but the family is looking for the two men still missing.
Well, as we told you at first at 5, Pittsburgh police tonight are trying to...
Good evening. This is the Action News Night Beat for Sunday, November 11th. The world's first heart-liver transplant recipient has died at Pittsburgh's Children's Hospital. A group of Glendale residents is determined to block a local strip mining project, but the big story on Action News, a single-engine plane goes down wreck. Fortunately, no serious injuries are reported. 3 passengers were on board the flight bound from Atlantic City to Allegheny County Airport. Action News crews are standing by live. Amy Hesser has our report. Amy?
Well, I'm reporting live here from the top of Tussey Mountain near Saxton, where the single-engine plane crashed just hours ago. And what apparently started out as a pleasure trip for 3 college-age students ended up being a close call for their lives. Fortunately, though, the 3 got out okay, but the one woman may actually have 2 broken legs. Now, the pilot was Roland Miles, 24. He's from Valparaiso, Illinois. And the woman who was injured, her name is Jill Garris. She's 21 years old, from Zion, Illinois. The 3rd victim in the crash was Darla Richards from Clayton, Indiana, and she also walked out of the crash virtually unscathed. The 3 have been taken to Nason Hospital. Now, with me now is Trooper Art Hershey from the state police, and he was part of the rescue team that was on the crash site. Trooper, what did you see when you got there?
When we arrived at the scene, it was a very rough area, only accessible by four-wheel drive vehicles. We were able to get in 3/4 of the way by an old power line, and then we had to hike the rest of the way with the Saxton volunteer firemen and state police officers hiking into the actual crash site. When we arrived at that crash site, we found the single-engine plane nosed into the ground. Very obviously it hit numerous trees. The two that had minor injuries were caring for their friend who had the more serious injuries. They had her on the ground and had covered her with all the clothing that they could find to prevent her from going into shock. They were all talking to us. The two with the minor injuries walked out from the crash site with one of our troopers. The third, the passenger, was carried out by Saxton firemen on a litter.
All right, thank you, Trooper Hershey. Now, the three could have been more seriously injured if their plane would have actually made it over the mountain and into the area of Saxton. There's no telling what could have happened then. This is Amy Hess reporting live from on top of Tussey Mountain. Mary Jo, back to you.
Okay, thank you for that report, Amy. In other news, a young girl who made history for her tonight that has left one person in the hospital is utilized to save lives. They do so with the assistance of the area ambulance and rescue personnel. Today in Blandburg, Cambria County, the MedStar flight crew showed the Reed Volunteer Company what it must do if there's a need for
help that we need when we come in on scene as far as taking care of the patient.
Memorial Hospital's MedStar helicopter is the only one of its kind between Pittsburgh and Hershey. A recent victory for the
Cambria County Airport when it went down last night in a wooded area on Tussey Mountain. The crash happened at about 7 p.m. and crews located the plane and its passengers about 2 hours later.
Homing device for aircraft, and we picked him up here, and he sort of took us into the area, and we visually spotted him just on a routine search.
The three people who were on board that plane are from Illinois and Indiana. The three were treated and released from Nason Hospital in Blair County. No word yet on the cause of that crash. A Coalport man is in critical condition tonight in the trauma unit at Allegheny General Hospital in Pittsburgh after a one-vehicle crash this morning. State police say Jeffrey McGarvey of Coalport lost control of his pickup truck on Route 53 north of Coalport at about 6:15 this morning and hit a utility pole. He reportedly suffered serious head injuries in the crash and was taken to Clearfield Hospital.
When he hit the berm, his car then swerved across the road, struck a rock embankment and flipped. Zeth was taken by helicopter to Memorial Hospital in Johnstown. A Gallitzin man is dead after his car collided head-on with a school bus. Police say Eric Butt was traveling south on Route 53 near North Gallitzin this morning when he drifted into the oncoming lane. The bus driver tried to stop, but the bus instead started to skid and the two collided. Buck was pronounced dead at the scene. The bus driver was not hurt. And in Minnesota today, a school bus was struck by a train. One child and the driver of the bus were killed. 21 children were injured. No one on the train was hurt. The accident happened at an intersection without warning lights or gates.
The bodies of crash in Blair County. It happened this afternoon on Old Route 22 in Blair County. Police say the victim hit an embankment while driving down Crescent Mountain. The car reportedly veered out of control, rolling over and coming to rest on its roof. The victim, whose name has not been released, was flown by helicopter to Conemaugh Valley Memorial Hospital. That accident tied up traffic on Old Route 22 for about an hour. State police officials today ruled the massive fire in downtown Lebanon earlier this week was...
A rash of unrelated accidents have taken the lives of classmates, friends, and relatives. A team of half a dozen professionals from the Cambria County Mental Health Mental Retardation Unit are offering some friendly ears and advice.
The Cambria County Mental Health Outreach Team is unique to the Allegheny region. Team members provide what they call postvention services, showing teachers, parents, and students that it's okay to grieve and helping them to deal with tragedy.
This is referred to as postvention because it occurs after a tragedy. But in fact, it is prevention, because if we can get in here on this level, when people are at a high stress level and in a crisis state, that's when you can tend to reach out to people more easily. They're more receptive to services, and you can nip the problem in the bud.
The outreach team works with special student assistance teams within school districts, providing guidance and offering direct help to groups or individuals.
it's okay to grieve. We encourage them to express their feelings, and we also tell them what is normal for them to be experiencing during a grief time, and some symptoms to look for that might linger, that they might need some help for down the road, either in themselves or to help them identify that in someone else that they're close to. If they're seeing that they're not sleeping well, to use that as a time to go in and sit down and talk about what's on their mind. If it gets to be lasting more than a couple of weeks, I think that's when they need to think about talking to someone else, talk to a professional.
The mental health outreach program costs taxpayers virtually nothing, but after a year of operation, it appears to be paying huge dividends. Bob Mainhart, News Center 6, Crescent.
Tasks most of us take for granted. But it's even more difficult for the disabled when the rest of us are insensitive to their needs. For example, when a person who isn't disabled parks in a handicapped space. Tonight in Part 2 of her Focus 10 report, No Place to Park, Michelle Saad talks with some of your neighbors who've known that frustration.
Altoona resident George Vaughn looks forward to his Saturday shopping trips all week. What he doesn't look forward to is hunting for an open parking space and a wheelchair ramp that isn't blocked.
I've actually had one or two occasions where I actually had to delay my shopping.
Try another time?
Yeah, try another time.
Action News confronted some people who are parked in handicapped spaces without plates or placards. But by law, we can't show you that on camera. But many disabled people also have done this, and they have some interesting stories to tell.
The truth of the matter is that during the holiday season, I actually don't go shopping very much. I have to get it all done by October because...
Linda Jeff was left partially paralyzed in a car accident and now wears a brace on one leg. Yet she's been confronted by people who don't see her problem as an actual disability.
Like if I wear jeans, you don't know that I have a brace. You don't know that I have a paralysis problem. And they have said to me, why don't you shop other times if you need these spots? Why do you shop during prime shopping hours?
Grace Civarella, who has severe respiratory problems, isn't afraid to confront people who park in reserved spots without tags. But she's often shocked by their attitudes.
And I checked his car, and he didn't have a handicap license or a place card. And I approached him about it, and he said, "Tough lady."
Many people with disabilities have similar stories. They feel others just don't realize that the reserved spaces are more than a convenience, because for someone with a disability, a parking lot can seem like a maze of danger.
Let's take the most extreme first. Let's take the fellow who has a wheelchair, and he's going through the parking lot. Boy, there's a good chance he could get hit.
It's hard to see.
So you want to put the parking space right next to the curb so he won't have to go between cars.
I spent time in a wheelchair. I spent time in a wheelchair where I couldn't even move the wheelchair myself. And all you have to do is spend a week like that, and you're going to have one heck of a different oblique on your mobility and getting around.
Tomorrow night, we'll take a look at some solutions in Part 3 of No Place to Park. Michelle Saad, TV 10 Action News.
Sports wishes Junior College National Prayer Service. Just two of the many prayer vigils held locally today and this evening. More are scheduled around the area tomorrow. Crash in Gallitzin, Cambria County. State police say 62-year-old Edith Duboski of Gallitzin was driving on a township road shortly after 1 this afternoon when she ran a stop sign. Her car hit a vehicle driven by 70-year-old Joseph Gata of Asheville. Gata and a passenger, 66-year-old Edith Gata, were taken to Memorial Hospital. They are both in fair condition tonight. Duboski was treated and released from Altoona Hospital. Blair County authorities want your help following a head-on.
Down, brace yourself, get down.
To war to keep the peace, and so it must be, because America has always been the peacekeeper of the world.
The group took time to pray for peace, sing in support of freedom, and remember those who died to protect them. Congressman Bud Schuster praised the crowd for its unity, but reminded that patience is the key to prevailing.
We hope that the ground war, if and when it comes, can be not much more than a mopping up. But impatience can be as big an enemy as Saddam Hussein.
Schuster says we've already accomplished air and naval superiority, and he expects the war will come to an
end. Will be short, swift, and with a minimum of casualties.
Similar words were echoed in this letter sent by President Bush to the people of the Mon Valley.
But of particular comfort to this patriotic crowd of about 450 people was a letter written to them by this man, Charleroi Lieutenant General William Gus Pagonis. Just days ago, during this ceremony in the Gulf, he was promoted to a 3-star Army general. Mike Pagonis took the honors of reading his brother's letter to the hometown crowd.
We all have reasons to be proud. Our young soldiers have accomplished so much in so little time defies imagination.
The pride of the people of Charleroi can only be eclipsed by the fear of what those young soldiers will face in the coming weeks. But folks say they'll be waving Old Glory for as long as it takes until Johnny comes marching home.
The residents of Charleroi say there will be another rally here, and they hope very soon. Only this one will be to welcome the troops home. In Charleroi, Sheila Highland.
Cottages. The association wants this strip of 8 cottages, the one-time summer homes of industrialist Andrew Carnegie and his associates, to be designated as a historical district.
So when they learned that he was here, then they come in and either bought or built a cottage. Now we're talking in mid-1870s is when this took place. Now
efforts are underway to make the Carnegie Cottage a museum, and work is also progressing well on the other side of town. The new Allegheny Portage Railroad Visitor Center is expected to open this fall. The $4 million center will be located here behind the historical Lemon House. Congressman Murtha says the new center will become the headquarters for the entire American Industrial Heritage Project.
Yeah, they can come in here, stop, and then talk and tell people where to go and how to visit and the best way to go back and forth to visit the various sites in the 9 counties.
National Park officials say the center will show how Keystone Country was much the keystone in building our country.
The Allegheny Portage Railroad really represents the conquest of the Allegheny Front, which is a key component of Western expansion in this country, which ultimately led to the Industrial Revolution.
Construction will also begin next year on a $6 million train engine house. And other plans are to restore the Lemon House back to its 1830 tavern setting.
That's what we envision, to have folks walk down this trail and take a step back in history and be in historic times.
Pete Yaksik, TV 10 Action News, Crescent.
It's not too far away from Wichita. This is some home video shot by a braver man than I. We're not expecting, hopefully, anything quite that severe, but some big thunderstorms are rolling our way. Today in Johnstown, we had some thunderstorms around early.
Downstairs. Lots of horror here. A horrifying day, in fact, for both students and teachers.
Oh, the flames and the smoke. You couldn't get near it. You just couldn't get near it. It was horrendous. There's this big, it sounded like
pattern at the time in this area, which I've been told is normal for this type of situation. What we don't know is, of course, if the plane was experiencing landing gear problems at the time. Earlier today, when I arrived here at the scene, I talked with one of the youngsters who attended this school, and if we could roll a portion of that interview now.
I heard a big crash. You know, it was really a big sound, and the whole school shook. And we heard an announcement to go out, and people were crying because they were worried about their little sisters or brothers in first grade.
Now, a little bit later, we talked to a janitor who certainly turned out to be one of the heroes here. He is the janitor at this Marion Elementary School. His name is John Fowler. He is credited with saving a number of the children whose clothes were on fire after this crash occurred. He suffered third-degree burns on his right hand, and I think you're going to hear some of the graphic comments that he made as he ran out into the schoolyard after this crash occurred. And a little bit later also, we're going to talk with Sandra Barrett. She's one of the third-grade school teachers here, and she will describe in graphic illustration what occurred when these planes came down. But that's the situation here so far. Members of the National Transportation Safety Board are on the scene investigating all of the bodies. Those aboard the helicopter and aboard the plane carrying Senator John Hines have now been removed. Reporting live from Marion Township, I'm Ray Tannehill, KDKA Eyewitness News.
Thank you, Ray. The man who worked side by side with John Hines in the U.S. Senate was among the multitude of dignitaries saddened by this tragedy. U.S. Senator Arlen Specter said, "Pennsylvania has lost a great senator, and America has lost an outstanding leader. For me, John was more than a colleague. He was a close personal friend." Congressman John Murtha was in Greensburg today when he heard the news. he was kind enough.
Outside, there were not more injuries or fatalities.
Hours after the crash, officials put the number of dead at 7. 2 children on the ground, 3 people in the plane, including Senator Hines, and 2 in the Sun Company helicopter that was checking out the plane's reported landing gear problem. Federal investigators from Philadelphia and Washington are examining the wreckage. It's likely to be some time before they'll say officially just what caused the collision over the Marion Elementary School. Mark Leff, CNN, reporting.
For 2 decades.
It was so sudden, Senator Hines' Washington office first referred to reports he had died in the crash as rumors. But before long, it was confirmed. The tragic rumors were true.
Earlier this afternoon, Senator Hines and 2 pilots that were accompanying him in a light aircraft was involved in a crash outside of Philadelphia. We understand that the senator and the 2 pilots were killed in the crash.
Almost immediately, the flags were lowered over the U.S. Capitol in the traditional tribute. Flags were also ordered at half-staff over the state capitol building in Harrisburg. President Bush called Hines a great leader, a great senator.
Yes, I'm heartsick about it.
We remember John Hines not only as a distinguished public official, but as a warm friend.
A dear friend and a colleague and a member of a number of the committees that we serve on, and I know him well, and I'm just really taken back.
Republican. During his 20 years in Congress, which included 14 in the Senate, he had focused less on national issues and more on problems that affected his state, trade, imports, and particularly the concerns of Pennsylvania's aging population, including health.
How we can continue to condone a